They said the higher he climbed, the colder he became. Behind glass walls and million-dollar views, his world was made of silence and control. No laughter, no warmth, no life beyond the ticking of clocks. But the day she walked in, the air shifted, soft, uninvited, real. No one knew it yet, but something human was about to awaken in a man who thought he'd buried his heart for good. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love hearing from you and always read every message. The city glittered like a machine. Towers of glass caught the morning light, and the hum of traffic rose from below like a pulse that never stopped. Inside the headquarters of Revell Industries, the air smelled of polished steel and ambition. Every step echoed on marble floors. Every glance was measured, strategic, sharp. At the top floor, Ethan Revell, the CEO, stood by the window. His reflection merged with the skyline, two worlds of control and distance. He had built his empire from loss, turning pain into discipline, heartache into profit, and yet no one truly saw him. To his employees, he was an equation of success, efficient, ruthless, untouchable. He turned as his board entered the room, a sea of tailored suits, forced smiles, and carefully disguised fear. "The numbers from the third quarter," said one of them, sliding a folder across the table. Ethan didn't look. "I've already seen them. You're late." A pause, the kind that freezes blood. The man nodded, murmured an apology, and stepped back. In that company, silence wasn't golden. It was survival. At the corner of the room, Claire, the new secretary, adjusted her papers nervously. It was her third week. She'd heard stories, that no one lasted more than a month working directly under him, that he never raised his voice, yet somehow everyone left broken. Her shoes clicked softly as she approached the desk. "Sir, your 10 a.m. meeting with the investors is confirmed. Also, there's a message from your brother." Ethan's gaze lifted for the first time. "Tell him I don't take personal calls during business hours." "He said it's about your father," she added quietly. For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes, something old, buried, and almost human. But then it was gone, replaced by the same distant calm. "Cancel my afternoon schedule," he said, "and bring me the report on the new acquisition." Claire nodded and turned away, her heart tightening at the chill in his voice. Outside the boardroom, whispers spread like smoke. "Poor girl," one employee muttered. "She won't last either." "No one does," replied another. "The man's made of stone." But as Claire passed them, holding her folders close, she caught a glimpse of him again, standing alone by the window, his reflection swallowed by the skyline, and for a split second she thought she saw it, grief, hiding in plain sight. But while the room laughed, the outsider's eyes shimmered faintly, as if holding a truth no one could yet see. The next morning, the boardroom was alive with murmurs. Investors from New York, London, and Singapore had gathered for a quarterly presentation. The air was thick with tension and perfume, success and fear mixed in equal measure. Claire moved silently between chairs, setting folders and glasses of water. She felt invisible. And maybe that was good. Every time Ethan entered a room, it was like oxygen left it. Then, the glass doors slid open. Ethan walked in, immaculate in charcoal gray, eyes fixed ahead. Every conversation stopped mid-word. "Good morning," he said, his voice even. "Let's begin." Charts appeared on the screen behind him. Growth rates, expansions, profits. His delivery was precise, emotionless, a symphony of numbers and control. Yet something in the room shifted when Victor Hale, the company's CFO and longtime rival, leaned forward. Victor had a smile made for cameras. Polished, deceptive, impressive figures. Ethan, he said. But some of us wonder, are these numbers sustainable? Or just another illusion to please shareholders? The room tensed. A few exchanged glances. One investor chuckled under his breath. Claire froze near the coffee table, sensing the sharpness hidden beneath the polite tone. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. If you have doubts, Victor, perhaps you'd like to present your alternative vision. Victor stood, smoothing his suit jacket. Gladly. You see, leadership isn't just about control. It's about connection, about trust. And maybe that's what we've been missing here. The words landed like stones. A murmur spread. Everyone knew what he meant, that Ethan was feared, not respected, obeyed, not trusted. Victor smiled wider. Maybe it's time we bring in someone with a heart, not just a calculator. Laughter erupted, quiet but cruel. Claire's chest tightened. She looked at Ethan, but he didn't move. He simply adjusted his cufflink, the faint gleam of his watch catching the light. Then, his gaze turned to her. For an instant, she thought he might speak. But instead, he said evenly, Miss Claire, prepare the proposal for the new acquisition. You'll present it. Every head turned. Me? She whispered. Victor raised an eyebrow. The secretary? Ethan's tone remained calm. If leadership is about connection, let's see it in action. The room went silent. The challenge was clear, both to Victor and to her. Claire's throat tightened. She'd never spoken in a boardroom before, let alone to a wall of men in $1,000 suits. But Ethan's eyes, cold as they were, held something steady, as if daring her, not mocking her. Victor leaned back, smirking. This should be entertaining. She looked down at the folders in her trembling hands, heart pounding like thunder. Every eye was on her, every whisper stung. And still, she nodded. I'll do it, she said softly. A ripple of disbelief moved through the room. Someone laughed. Another reached for their phone, recording, of course. But Ethan just leaned back in his chair, silent, watching. No one believed they would even try. But the silence that followed spread across the hall like fire. The next morning, the entire building seemed to whisper about her. The girl who'd accepted the CEO's impossible challenge. The secretary who was supposed to embarrass herself in front of investors. The rumor spread faster than truth ever could. In the elevator, Claire could hear them. Muffled voices, amused tones. Poor thing, someone said. She's walking into a fire. Maybe that's what he wants, another whispered, to prove a point. To humiliate her, but none of them knew what she was carrying, what it meant to stand, trembling, before a man who had lost the ability to feel, and still try to reach him. The boardroom was colder than usual that day. Ethan sat at the head of the table, reading through projections. Claire entered quietly, holding her notes. She'd been up all night learning, studying, rehearsing. He didn't look up. You're early. I wanted to prepare, she said. Good. Preparation is the only thing that separates survival from collapse. His words were sharp, but not unkind. They cut through the air like truth, not cruelty. Claire hesitated before speaking again. Mr. Ravel, may I ask why you chose me? He finally looked at her. His gaze, steady and unreadable, met hers for what felt like a lifetime, because you were the only one in the room who didn't laugh. The silence that followed felt heavy, intimate, almost painful. Over the next days, he called her into more meetings. She listened, took notes, learned faster than anyone expected. When Victor questioned her data, she calmly explained the logic behind it. When others interrupted, she waited, then spoke with quiet precision. Something began to shift. Even Ethan noticed. He'd find her in the late hours, still working under the soft light of her desk lamp, fingers brushing over spreadsheets and reports with care, not greed. There was something about that kind of dedication, not ambition, not vanity, but sincerity. One night, as he left his office, he paused by her desk. "You should go home," he said. "I will," she murmured, without looking up. "Just a few more minutes." "You said that 2 hours ago." She smiled faintly. "Some of us need more time to catch up to people like you." He studied her face, the quiet exhaustion, the determination. For the first time in years, he almost smiled. Almost. But word of her progress reached Victor Hale, and envy, when mixed with fear, becomes poison. During the next meeting, Victor interrupted her presentation mid-sentence. "Fascinating, Miss Claire," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "Did you prepare these figures yourself? Or did the CEO lend you his genius?" Laughter again, the kind that hurts. She swallowed hard. "I prepared them, sir." "Of course," he replied. "Then maybe you can explain this discrepancy here." He pointed to a chart, one tiny misalignment in data, twisted out of context. Claire froze. Her pulse roared in her ears. Before she could answer, Ethan spoke. "The data is accurate. Check your source, Victor." The room went silent. Victor blinked, caught off guard. "You're defending her." Ethan's gaze turned to him, cold as glass. "I'm defending competence, something you might want to revisit." Claire looked at him, and for the first time saw not the ruthless CEO, but a man protecting something fragile, perhaps even sacred. A small spark of humanity had slipped through his armor, and though no one noticed, she did. And just when everyone thought they would break, something was revealed that no one expected. The day of the presentation arrived like a storm. Investors filled the room, their voices low, expectant. Cameras blinked. Phones were ready to record, not out of respect, but to witness the fall everyone had predicted. Claire stood near the projector, heart pounding in her throat. Ethan sat behind her, silent, his expression unreadable. The city's skyline burned through the glass behind him, sunlight slicing the room in gold and white. Victor leaned back, smiling. "Well then, Miss Claire, impress us." The lights dimmed. The first slide appeared. Her voice trembled at first, soft, hesitant. But as she spoke, something began to shift. She talked about numbers, yes, but also about people, about the workers who stayed late to keep the company alive, about the single mother from accounting who came in every day, rain or shine, because she believed in what they built. It wasn't just data, it was heart disguised as logic. Ethan's eyes never left her. Each word seemed to reach something buried deep within him, a memory, a loss, a promise he'd forgotten to keep. Halfway through, Victor interrupted. "Touching," he said dryly, "but sentiment doesn't drive profit. You're selling emotions, not results." Claire turned to him. Her fear was gone now. "Maybe," she said quietly, "but without people, numbers mean nothing." A murmur rippled through the room. Even the investors, hard men of finance, seemed moved by her calm defiance. Ethan rose. "She's right," he said, his voice steady. "When my father founded this company, he didn't start with numbers. He started with trust. We've lost that. And it's on me." The room froze. He had never spoken like that before, never shown a crack in the marble of his perfection. Victor's smile faltered. "Are you admitting failure, Ethan?" Ethan's gaze sharpened. "No, I'm admitting humanity." "Something you'll never understand," gasps whispered through the air. For the first time, the power in the room had shifted, subtly, irreversibly. Claire looked at him, a quiet awe stirring behind her eyes. When the presentation ended, there was silence, not of mockery, but of reverence. Then, one by one, the investors began to clap, Slowly at first, then with force, Victor sat motionless, jaw tight. He had lost, though no one said it out loud. Ethan turned to Claire. "Well done," he said simply. She smiled, her eyes glistening under the soft light. "Thank you, sir." He paused, and for the first time, his voice softened in a way that wasn't rehearsed. "It's Ethan." Her breath caught. A small gesture, but in that cold, mechanical world, it felt like a sunrise breaking through clouds that had lingered for years. It wasn't just skill. It was dignity. And suddenly, silence fell across the crowd. That night, the rain came. It fell against the glass walls of the tower like 1,000 whispers, as if the city itself was trying to wash something clean. The meeting was over. The investors were gone. But Ethan stayed in his office, alone, staring at the faint reflection of his own face against the skyline. The applause still echoed in his mind, not because of triumph, but because it had been hers, not his. For the first time in years, he had let someone else carry the light, and it had terrified him. Claire knocked softly. "You're still here," she said, stepping in. He didn't turn. "I could say the same about you. You haven't eaten all day. I brought something." On his desk, she placed a paper cup of coffee and a small sandwich from the lobby cafe. It was absurd. The CEO of Ravel Industries eating from a paper bag. But something about the gesture felt sacred. He looked at her. Finally. "Why are you doing this?" She hesitated. "Because someone once did the same for me, when I thought I didn't matter." He studied her face, the quiet sincerity, the absence of fear. There was no strategy in her eyes, no ambition, just kindness, unpolished and real. And that was what broke him. He turned away, voice low. "My father used to bring coffee to the office every morning, said it reminded him that success was supposed to taste simple. Before he died, His voice caught. "I wasn't there. I was too busy being important." Claire didn't speak. She just placed a hand on the desk, not touching him, but close enough to bridge the distance. "Sometimes we lose people before we realize they were our anchor," she said softly. "But that doesn't mean we stop loving them. It just means we learn how to carry them differently." He closed his eyes. For a long time, neither of them moved. The door burst open. Victor Hale. His voice cut through the silence. "Touching. Very touching. I hope the shareholders appreciate your new, sentimental management style." Ethan straightened. "What do you want, Victor?" Victor threw a folder on the desk. "I want the truth. You think you can hide numbers, cover debts, play the savior while your company bleeds?" Claire stepped back, startled. "That's not true." Victor sneered. "Isn't it? Maybe you should ask your hero here what happened to the pension fund 2 years ago, when his father's death conveniently covered up $1 million reallocation." Ethan's hands clenched. "You're twisting it." Victor smiled. "Am I? Or are you finally afraid someone might see you for what you are?" For a moment, the mask fell from Ethan's face. All the years of control, the endless pursuit of perfection, they cracked, revealing something raw beneath. He took a deep breath. "I made that choice. My father's medical bills. I covered them with company funds. I thought I could replace it before anyone noticed. I didn't." Claire's eyes widened. "You sacrificed everything to save him." Victor's voice was venom. "You call that sacrifice, I call it corruption." But before Ethan could respond, Claire stepped forward. "No, you call it humanity, something you've never understood." Her voice trembled, but her courage filled the room like light. "He made a mistake, yes, but not for greed, for love, and that's something I'd defend 1,000 times over." Victor froze, speechless, outraged. The storm outside roared louder, as if the city itself was listening. Ethan looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a leader, not as a failure, but as a man. He turned to Victor. "You wanted the truth? Here it is. I built this company out of guilt. Every dollar was a brick in the wall between me and my father's grave. But today I realized something." He stepped closer. "You can't lead through fear and call it strength. You can't erase pain by turning it into profit." Victor tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "You're finished." Ethan smiled, calm, unafraid. "No, Victor, you are." Behind him, Claire handed over a sealed folder. "These are the audit reports you asked for," she said. "We found the discrepancies in your department." The color drained from Victor's face. The board had already seen them. The trap he'd set had snapped shut. On himself. Ethan looked at him, almost with pity. "You mistook kindness for weakness. You always did." Victor's lips trembled with rage. "You'll regret this." "I already have," Ethan said quietly. "But now, at least, I can live with it." And for the first time, there was peace in his voice. But the final blow came not from power. It came from a truth everyone had tried to forget. The rain had stopped. By morning, the city gleamed, the kind of washed, fragile brightness that comes only after a long storm. The world outside the tower seemed renewed, but inside Ravel Industries, the air was heavy with the aftermath of truth. Victor Hale had been escorted out quietly, his face pale, his arrogance stripped bare. No shouting, no scandal, just silence. That was always how empires fell, not with explosions, but with the sound of doors closing. Ethan stood by the window of his office, the same window where he had watched the city for years, searching for meaning in glass and numbers. Only now, he wasn't looking at the skyline. He was watching her, standing near the desk, gathering the last of her things. "You're leaving?" he said softly. Claire turned, surprised. "I wasn't sure I still had a job." He almost smiled. "You do. But I imagine you'll find something better than this place." She hesitated, holding a small plant she'd kept by her desk. "It's not the place I want to leave," she said. "It's what it reminds me of." He tilted his head. "And what's that?" "That people forget to live while they're busy trying not to feel." The words sank into him like truth always does, quietly, deeply, unavoidably. He walked to his desk, opened the drawer, and took out a small silver pen, the one his father had given him the day he became CEO. It had never left that drawer. He handed it to her. "My father used to say that every decision begins with a single line. Take it. You'll write better stories than I ever did." She looked at him, eyes shining. "Ethan." "Go, Claire," he said, voice calm but thick with emotion. "You were never meant to stay hidden here." She nodded slowly, then stepped closer. "You don't have to keep being alone, you know." He met her gaze. For a long second, neither spoke. Then, in a whisper that barely existed, "I know." She turned toward the elevator, holding the pen tightly. A small, metallic promise of something unspoken. When the doors closed, he didn't chase her. He just stood there, surrounded by the quiet hum of computers and rain-soaked light. On his desk, where she had once left her coffee cup, he placed a single folded note. In her handwriting, simple and unadorned, it read, "Don't let the world harden you again." He exhaled, a sound that felt like release. Outside, the city moved, the same as ever, and yet not the same at all. And as he walked away, no one dared laugh again, for they finally understood what they had witnessed. Months passed. The building still stood tall over the city, the same mirrored tower that once reflected nothing but ambition. But something subtle had changed within its walls. Laughter began to echo again in hallways once ruled by silence. Meetings started with questions like, "How are you?" Words that had never belonged there before. Ravel Industries was no longer the empire of fear it had been. It was becoming something rarer, human. Ethan no longer sat behind the massive glass desk. He'd resigned quietly, turning the company over to a younger board, the same people he had once dismissed as idealists. Now, he worked from a smaller office downtown, helping rebuild small businesses that had been crushed by the same system he once commanded. He lived simply, coffee in paper cups, morning walks by the river. And sometimes, though he'd never admit it, he looked up at the tower in the distance and smiled, remembering the woman who'd walked in and reminded him what feeling was supposed to mean. One spring afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the park, he passed a bookstore window and froze. Inside, on a display table, sat a hardcover book. Its title read, "The Line We Choose: Stories of Quiet Courage," by Claire Bennett. He stepped inside, almost afraid to touch it. The cover showed nothing grand, just a silver pen resting on a notebook. His pen. He turned it over and read the dedication. For those who believed silence was strength, until someone taught them to listen again. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't feel regret. Only peace. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Ethan walked to the edge of the river. The city lights shimmered in the water, golden and trembling, like memories refusing to fade. He whispered, almost to himself, "Thank you." And somewhere, in the quiet rhythm of the wind, in the rustle of leaves, in the heart of a world too loud to hear itself, her voice seemed to echo back, "You're welcome." The river kept flowing. The city kept breathing. Life went on, imperfect, fragile, and beautiful. And maybe that was the point all along, that love doesn't always end with forever. Sometimes it ends with understanding, with forgiveness, with the courage to begin again. In a world blinded by arrogance, sometimes a single act of quiet dignity is enough to change the course of history.